Good morning YouTube and welcome back to Project Hoonigrom and episode 9. So for those of you that saw the last video, so the bike went out on the road for its first time. Awesome feeling, especially after the hours of work and thinking about how to make things fit. It was great to actually have it out on the road, but not all was great as we saw. So we're currently waiting for the jetting kit to turn up, which looks like it was going to be 7 to 10 days. I was hoping they were just putting it on that and it would be a bit sooner, but it's not. So hopefully next week's video, we'll be back out on the road, we'll have the new jetting kit in and things will be working. But what we need to do in today's video is need to finish off the dash that I built out of acrylic before. I wasn't 100% sold on it. Built one out of a bit of sheet alley. Still need to make the screen. I've blown up a second temperature gauge. Thank God they're cheap. I'm not sure what's happening there because I've got 12 volt on the bike. The lights are working. I've fed it off that same supply circuit, but I have a light switch, so when I start the bike I always make sure the lights are off so I don't put a big draw on the spark. And I'm just wondering whether I'm getting a bit of voltage spike that's killed another one, because whenever I put it to a 12 volt battery it's working fine. As soon as I try to use it on the bike it doesn't even power up. So obviously I had to do the old school, fill the radiator, it's hot, let's go for a ride. But it would be nice to have a temperature gauge just to make sure everything is working correctly at temperature. So I'm tempted to run a small 12 volt battery to power the lights and the temperature gauge, and the reason for this is it will take the load off of the ignition system, which is quite small anyway because it doesn't have a battery, and because I'm never really going to be doing more than an hour or so's riding, I can just put a trickle charger lead on there, charge it up. When I take it out, if I need the lights, I've got the lights, indicators, etc., all run off the battery. The problem is I blew up the stock headlight earlier in the video series. Some of you may have seen that for whatever reason, it doesn't run 12 volt on the headlight. Baffles me because the indicators, tail light, the rest of the wiring loom is 12 volt. I put 12 volt to the headlight, it flashed, obviously, its final glory showed itself, and then that's the end of that. So we've got some 12 volt LED lights to try and fit in there. So in today's video, we're going to build the dash, build the fly screen, open up the headlight, and see if we can put a new unit inside that's 12 volt and run a 12 volt standalone wiring circuit. At least that's the plan anyway. With the headlight unit removed from the front fairing, you can now see that we've got some small clips dotted around the perimeter. Now the problem is, from what I've read on the Owners Club, is there is actually like a glue or a resin that holds these in there. Some say you can put it in the oven, some say you can use a heat gun. A little bit wary of that because I don't want to melt all the plastic, so I'll just use a hairdryer, see if we can warm it up and pry it. I'm not sure how much I'm going to get on footage here because I think I'm going to be wrestling the lens, but hopefully in the next clip, we'll have this fascia removed and the lenses, and we'll be able to start looking at the guts inside. So these are the new LED headlights. Well, I think they're just generic like van, or like you can bolt them to your grills and stuff. I got them off eBay. I think they were like 5 or 6 quid for 2 delivered. And as I say, they're a bit too big, unfortunately. So you probably get 4 in there in the top, but it's a bit too tall on the back. So I've got 2. Definitely not going to be able to use a full length one in the lower one, may be able to modify one to fit in the high beam. So what I'm actually going to do is put this in the vise and try and open this up and see if we can modify it once it's apart. We shall see. With the unit apart, I had to unfortunately cut the cables that were linking the circuit board because they're all glued in to the housing. I definitely didn't want to risk breaking it, but it just shows you how much of that is all the casing. What my plan now is, and this is where it might go wrong and we have to use the spare because we've got two, is I'm going to chop this down so I've got 4 bulbs on there. And the reason for that is in the top housing here, if I rest 4 in, ta-da-da! Actually looks pretty good. So as you can probably see, or you may not be able to see on the camera, see if that focuses, the circuit board's got like copper strips in it that run for the power. So I'm pretty confident. Whether my solder iron's going to be too hot will be the question, but I'll be able to chop this board down to 4, glue that in there, and with a bit of luck, we've got the high beam, and if that works, we can go on to the low beam. Good and bad news. Unfortunately, I can only get 3 of them to work using the original points. I tried to get back to the copper, tried to touch on that tab there. That 4th one just is not playing ball. I mean, it could be something to do with the little microchips in it. I'm not an LED expert, but yeah, glad that we've got 3 on there. They're incredibly bright, obviously, compared to the 2 that are on the standard one. This should be a big improvement anyway, at least give us some lighting. And there we have it, the light unit in there. You can see I've done the bottom row, basically identical to the top. Lots of glue, gun glue. I'm hoping because the LEDs run cold that I'm not going to get any issues with them going soft the moment I power it up. I ran them for about 2 minutes and they didn't put off any heat. So hopefully that'll all hold. But like I say, I did more video on the top part on the high beam, and then the low beam I mimicked it exactly the same. As you can see there, the trim's all glued on. So I'm going to put the glue gun on now, reseal the face. We've got the wiring all out there, high beam, low beam, and I've modified the plug ready to work, and I'll solder all the guts in on that now. The headlight unit all back together, the plug in, the wires ready, and I've saved the colours so that I know how to wire the plug back on the bike side. We could now put all the nose cone back together, but as you can see, if I rest this on here, flip it over, we've got 4 screws that hold that to the trim plate, and before I had my homemade fly screen that just rested just down in there, and obviously it was just pushed in place, it was bouncing around, it couldn't really be used on the road, it was just to give me an idea. It's not even cut symmetrically, it looks a pretty big mess, to be honest with you. Wrong way around. Is it wrong way around? No, it's that way. So what my plan is take some measurements now while it's off the bike and try and utilize these 2 screws here and build it out a sheet alley so it'll all be fastened in there and it won't wiggle around or potentially fall out. So that's the next job. So another day passes in Project Grom build. Yesterday we managed to get the new fly screen completed, the headlight all rigged up. Really chuffed with how that's come out, to be honest with you. And I started building the small top screen. We've got to wait for the new temperature gauge to arrive as well, but that's looking pretty cool. It needs being properly keyed because the paint's just chipping off. It's just done to make sure everything works. There's a good chance it could all be getting removed again. So as mentioned many times in this video, this is very much the rough put together, see how it all does. But today's mission, with the sun shining, compared to yesterday's horrific downpours that we had all day, is to build the standalone electronic wiring loom. So lights, horn, indicators, etc. So let's get that underway now. Well, it might look an absolute state with wiring everywhere, but I just wanted to rig it all up and make sure everything works. So great news. So first of all, I mean, we haven't got the new temperature gauge yet, but eventually when that goes on, it will power up temp gauge. But if we turn on the light switch, we now have low beam, high switch, which is cool. They actually, even though obviously the big lights running here are really bright, indicators, it's all good. And obviously we've got the tail light as well. So if we just go back to the headlight switch, sweet. Press the brake pedal. I can reach it one-handed. Sweet. And then my best part of all is the horn. I don't know why it sounds like this, but it's like a little baby truck horn. So funny. But anyway, yeah, so now it's just a case of taping everything back up. Obviously making sure I've got a 12-volt feed, clean all these connectors up for the temperature gauge, and then the loom is done on its standalone, running off the little battery. So I will get a little 12-volt lithium, because it doesn't need a big battery. It's got no starting amps on it. You can see the size of the cable is pretty tiny, but I need to heat shrink and solder all of this, and then we can put it back on the bike and we have all the wiring. Well, the sunny weather didn't last long, did it, unfortunately, but is what it is. It's the UK at the moment. Let's hope it dries up, because that jet kit's going to be here soon, and that is going to wrap up today's video. So I'm really hoping that we're going to get the jet kit and temperature sensor turn up in the next couple of days. So fingers crossed, the next video on Wednesday will be out on the road and it'll actually be working with a bit of luck. But two-stroke and project bike life, no real surprise if it doesn't. But until the next time, thanks for watching. If you haven't done so already, hit that like button and consider subscribing. Thanks, guys.